So checking out the debate last night, some are saying that this is the worst debate of all time. I'm not sure that it's actually worse than the debate that happened between Trump and President Biden, where President Biden could hardly say a coherent thought. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Lucas? Did you catch the whole thing? Did you enjoy it?
I watched the whole thing. I don't know about the worst debate of all times. I don't even like to call them debates. They are presidential perp walks in some sort of way. I really, I don't, I don't, I don't like the what we've stumbled into with the whole muted mic aspects of it. There was just a whole lot of positioning by both of the candidates, and there was more than positioning of the candidates. There was a whole lot of evading any of the questions, and even the questions that were posed by the moderators were problems. So maybe if we looked at it from the moderator standpoint, or but it wasn't a debate for starters.
Well, that's been one of the leveled criticisms at this debate that occurred, right? Is that the moderators really didn't seem like they were neutral. They really didn't seem to be facilitating a discussion so much as they seem to be almost participating in the discussion.
Yeah, I don't know that, like, nobody should be surprised that the moderators were going to be one-sided. And I think this speaks to our mistaken beliefs in both truth, in fact, in nonpartisan news sources. Those nonpartisan news sources don't exist. We talked yesterday about the post office and how important a post office was for candidates to get their information out. But this notion that there's some sort of fourth arm of American democracy or American government is a joke, and maybe a joke that was put forward by interested bureaucratic agencies like the CIA and the State Department, who were looking since the 50s to infect minds of America. But we've got to get away from that. So,
well, to some extent, we did have that in times past, because we had these thoughts of how there were actually laws that were in place that said there was supposed to be equal time, and that you had to have a certain level and bar of the information that got put out, and all that got rolled back. I think, was it during the 80s and 90s?
I'm not sure when it got rolled back, but that is.
Do you remember what I'm talking about, though? It's like the name escapes.
Absolutely, but
just what was it, if you remember? I'll throw it on the screen just in case people aren't familiar with this.
Now what a question.
Some kind of doctrine, right? I can't remember exactly what that was.
Well, in something like, some people call it Raytheism, Raytheon, R-E-I-T-H-I-A-N, Raytheon journalism. Raytheon was John Raytheon, I believe his name was a believer in this notion in the BBC, in the early years of the BBC in Great Britain. But this whole notion of the fairness doctrine, maybe we call it the fairness doctrine in the United States, I'm not sure. But this is on the heels of massive censorship that the United States government engaged in with the selection and the promotion of the news agencies. And that was not a great time by any measurement in American history. I mean, let's think back to McCarthyism. If we think that we're hearing about, yeah, it is the fairness doctrine. When was it repealed? It was probably repealed sometime about the time of Rush Limbaugh, and with the growth of.
Does this say 1985? It looks like doctrine stayed in effect, was enforced until the Reagan administration.
Yeah, okay, till the Reagan administration. And but part of the problem, with this whole understanding that you can give equal airtime to different sides of the view. Well, what are the sides? who picks those sides? Because there's not there's not a dichotomy when it comes to the nuance of politics in the United States, and not only that, but even like selecting those issues is a great power. When you look at say like the political structure of your local government, what power does a mayor have? They have the power of setting the agenda.
Well, there used to be this thought that like journalism was a high calling and that there was a significant amount of money, time, and effort that was put into it. And then that started to decrease once the whole advertising infrastructure around that type of journalism evaporated. And then you saw the gutting of those organizations. I mean, investigative journalism, that used to be like a, what, didn't they call that the fourth arm of government? It was this
I mean,
mechanism.
but that is a line of honestly bullshit. Like that. The question we should ask if we believe such a thing is who was the authority that was behind this ideal of journalism. And I think that once we begin to understand how in hand the bureaucratic side of government was in selecting, what is truth, what is the correct American diplomacy, what is the correct American domestic policy, like that's what you get back to. And so what we were seeing whenever we saw um, the fairness doctrine in use was was a mirage of fairness, a mirage of discourse, and we should go back to the earlier understanding of the press. I mean, when it was when we had the
The mudslinging days of the early days of the
exactly,
Republic.
yeah, exactly, when we had Greeley and oh, who was uh, who is Citizen Kane written about? I forget his name, but William Randolph Hearst, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's not a bad thing to understand that those people who are motivated to be telling you a story and to be engaging in politics are doing so in coming from a oh, look at it, there's Citizen Kane, a, a political motivation or even a moral motivation. And I talk a lot about how I think it's impossible to actually separate church and state, or to separate religious and a moral understanding of the world from a political discussion. And part of the whole fairness doctrine was a muting and a hand washing of moral questions from the American discourse.
So you're essentially what you're asserting is this was like a lie. It wasn't really happening this way, and it was just this convenient thing that everybody was believing at the time. Because
Absolutely,
he who
absolutely.
sets the agenda really sets the stage for the discourse.
Yeah, and this is one thing that I really love about Donald Trump, because nobody has chipped away at at that false institution more so than Donald Trump. And he did it by, like, look at how he's changed the path for politicians with regards to speechwriters. And it's one thing to be eloquent, but it's another thing to stand up there and to say what's coming to your mind and not be so careful with regards to every last thing that's said. And that gets thrown
Well,
back
well,
into
that was one of the criticisms of Kamala's responses, right? Is that it seemed like everything was just super rehearsed, and she wasn't really participating. She was more just delivering these policy statements that she had drilled repeatedly.
Yeah, and there's been talk of is she wearing an earpiece, and was she coached? To me, well, that we shouldn't even necessarily be concerned about that. If yeah, I'm because that is a red herring. Like the question, if anyone's engaged in that goes back to this whole notion of the fairness doctrine, and that both does not honor the listeners who were listening to the debates and the followers of each of the different sides, because some people are going to hear what they want to hear. When Kamala launched into her answer for the first question, I didn't think, oh my God, she's being coached. I thought, oh, she's prepared. She has a bunch of things that she wants to say. And because this isn't an actual discussion between two candidates, and because it's moderated, and because the mics are muted on the other side, like it's worse than even the the uh, um, the boisterous sort of, the primary debates with 10 people on stage and the yelling that goes back and forth. I actually kind of like that, because I get to see the belief or the conviction or the desire to be heard come from those candidates. But when it
Yeah,
comes,
yeah, I'm reminded of that debate that happened when Jeb Bush was on stage with Trump, in that very
oh,
early phase of that.
that was brilliant. And
Yeah,
Trump does that, so he does it so well. But part of what I didn't like to see from Trump, actually, I do like to see it. Like, look at Trump leading into this debate. He's been giving long form interviews. He's been sitting down with Elon, with some people I've never heard of.
Lex Fridman,
And good Lord, God bless Lex Fridman.
your favorite guy.
Uh, um,
Is there anyone more boring besides Lex Fridman? Maybe Charlie Rose.
I'm glad that you said that, not me. I was about to say that. And I mean, more boring and also more institutional with regards to how did Lex Fridman ever get anyone to sit down and listen to his boring questions? Well, because he was a grad student at MIT, and he used the draw of MIT to get some people who wanted to get uh, venture capitalists to listen to their ideas. So
During that whole de-evolution of X, that's when I found out that Lex Fridman was actually Russian. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that he was Russian.
Yeah, I'll pull up the Wikipedia page.
Oh my goodness, the plot thickens. Um, he's a finger of Putin, and no. Back to the debate, and back to the fairness doctrine. So the fairness
Yeah,
doctrine.
see, born in the Soviet Union, right here.
Look at that.
Grew up in Moscow.
No way. And when did he come to? When he was 11, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Well,
But this is kind of weird. It's like, so, but he moved from Chicago, so what's, I don't know. There's some interesting stuff here, but yeah, he was he's in Soviet Union. And that's not his original name either, I don't think.
Oh, I was going to say, were his parents academics at the University of Chicago, but no, his father was a plasma physicist at Drexel.
Yeah.
So, well, there you go.
Hired by Google too is one of the.
Yeah, well, I mean, how far has Google stood away from the hand of DARPA, and how close is,
Just as a quick aside note, I've actually seen some things that say that most of the big VC-backed whatever are just like DARPA handout things, or just like
well,
government handout mechanisms.
absolutely, and even to this, the notion of free discourse, or of also empowerment of the citizen in the United States, like part of the control that the blob, the State Department, the DOJ, and the CIA, now the FBI, have exerted on American minds has been through the imprimatur of elite elite academic institutions, and we all know of that MIT and Stanford are sort of the mastheads of venture capitalism, and where people go with breaking ideas, especially with regards to the tech world. But that all, when you start looking at where that money comes from, it comes from the defense industry, and those institutions really begin to grow in power and prowess as we fund more and more so the military industrial complex. Like, why do we have the tech industry in California? It has a lot to do with the aerospace industry moving out to California, and and software engineers, computer scientists turning to do other things and to play with inventions that that DARPA and the military had come up with during wartime. I mean,
Anyway, big aside to what we're talking about on the debate. Do we want to circle back around, or do we want to talk about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, let's circle back to the debate, but I guess you begin to understand like where I'm coming from when I see a debate. Like, I don't necessarily want to see some starched collars and Charlie Rose, Lex Fridman, or maybe who was the head of the national, William F. Buckley. I don't want to see Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley. I enjoy the Donald Trump who is both trolling. I want to see humor. I don't need to see prepared or written speeches.
I like the Ross Perot when he used to bring out the whiteboards and the card stock, and he would draw stuff like that. That was one of my favorite political candidates of like the era of just unfettered kind of raw. Here's thoughts. As far as Trump breaking it down, 100% he has in a brand new way. But I think it was probably Perot that paved the way for it, right?
Absolutely, and I love Ross Perot because exactly that. He had a message, and he stood in front of a camera before Newt Gingrich did it, before Rush Limbaugh sat in front of his golden microphone, or Alex Jones, like wherever, like sat in front of broadcast network in Austin, Texas. Ross Perot like took his concerns about the way America was going, and forget not that Ross Perot went to the Naval Academy, and he was a brilliant. He went to the Naval Academy on the strength of his mind, and at a time whenever the blue bloods that ran America, or who were concerned with American policy and dictating what that conversation was. Ross Perot had very different ideals. He was a poor boy from Northeast Texas, and he went to the Naval Academy where everyone thought he was crazy. And later he started some amazing businesses but those businesses again were capitalizing on technology that came to us from the military, data. Yeah, EDS. He was electronic data systems and data processing. He was an early big data guy. So, but anyway, to Trump and Kamala. Kamala started, I think she got the first question, and she immediately did not answer the question. The question was, do you feel like we're in a better place than we were 4 years ago? And instead of talking about
Well, of course you can't answer that question, because of there's not an American who resonate and say that they feel better off, right? So like, of course she's got to dodge that one.
Absolutely, and she dodged it, and she immediately proceeded with an ad hominem attack. She talked about where she was from. She made it personal, like, I'm a poor girl with a poor mom, and led with biography. We talk in spaces and engage in discussion on X, in various places all the time. Like, the hair on the back of my neck stands up every time either I mention my biography or anybody else does, because I know that we're getting away from a debate about ideas. But the American public is not prepared for that kind of nuance, and even Donald Trump fell capture to it. Like, whenever he came in to answer the question, it was at that point too that I thought, so Donald Trump, if you were watching him as she was answering the question, as he was answering, like, you could see that that they both felt the absence of the ability to interject and to emotionally control what was going on. And so they were both looking in how to have a discussion about their policies. And Donald Trump again has been giving a lot of interviews with sort of long form sit down interviews where he wants to come off less unhinged, less emotional, to sort of exert his power and now experience at the helm of the presidency. And yay for him in wanting to do so, but this was not the best place to do that. Or the like bowing to the questions that were put forth by the moderators was a problem because there were things that he obviously wanted to talk about. He talked a lot about immigration. He talked a lot about the violence and the crime of immigrants in America. That was really the thing that he focused on, and to his detriment, I think. It would have been better if he was throwing back these ideas and asking Kamala, why have you engaged in all of these things? And this is where I really thought the debate, as a
sometimes he did that. I mean, it's hard for him to throw back a question, right? Because I think for the way that the debate was formulated, like the way that it was supposed to go back and forth, that the mics were muted, it didn't really lend itself towards him saying a question that he'd want Kamala to answer, because she probably just would have ignored it. There were certain times where I think he somewhat achieved that when he said, you're in power. Why don't you just do the things you're saying you could do? Like, your administration is there. You're the vice president. Biden is there. Anything you say I'm going to do later, you could do it right now. And it's a similar criticism of like when she says she's going to lower food prices. It's like, you could lower food prices right now if that was in your power, but it isn't. You're not going to be able to do that. So you're just making empty promises that are clearly campaign rhetoric that don't make a lot of sense. So anything that you're promising that you can do later, there's nothing stopping you from doing it right now if it's actually within your purview or power to do it. And I think one valid criticism that he did level was, if you guys wanted to do something about the border and illegal immigration, you could be doing it right now. There's nothing stopping you, and it's just your policy, and you're trying to say that it isn't, but it clearly has been your policy.
Well, as the debate wore on, they started interjecting each other more, and the moderators were acceding to their request to respond to things that the other said in their monologues. But to going back to this notion of like what is the control of those who set the agenda, those who ask the questions. Part of the control that Donald Trump and Kamala both fell prey to was their time limits. Donald Trump should have not asked rhetorical questions, because whenever he was asking those questions of why haven't you done it, it was sort of rhetorical. What he should have done was ask like specific questions to Kamala at the point whenever she started interjecting, and he should have said things of, you are the border czar. You allowed all these immigrants in. Let's not argue or debate about the minutia of the facts with regards to violence and what the metrics of recording that are, because that's something that we need, 15 minutes of talking each, and our charts and graphs, and maybe that's best set up for us to be like
maybe that's part of the hubris of where I think Donald Trump fell down a bit in this debate. Kamala clearly was prepared. She came in, she had a certain number of things she wanted to say. She was ready to say it. She said it in a way that was clearly rehearsed and ready. I don't feel like Trump came in similarly rehearsed and ready. I think that might have been a bit of a misstep on his side to just say, like, this is not going to be the same Biden debate where you get to walk in and he's going to mumble and anything you say is going to look way better than what Biden did, because he's not coherently capable of actually doing this because of whatever's happening with his dementia. So for him to come in, I think, less prepared and less ready to say concretely the kinds of things that he cares about, because I think he missed on a lot of things as far as putting together the unity ticket, putting together people who could really drive a substantive policy for the United States, fixing some of the systemic issues and the capture that's happened, things that Bobby brought to the table that ostensibly, with Bobby being part of what's happening with the Trump administration or being there, or even with, Gabbard and other people that have joined the team, that's a strong selling point. I don't know why they didn't focus on that more.
I mean, I 100% agree. I wish that he had brought up, especially with some of the last questions, the alliances that he's made with the likes of Bobby and Tulsi Gabbard, but he didn't. He focused on immigration crime, and that was part of the problem. But I don't fault him for the lack of quote unquote preparedness, because I think what Donald Trump sees and what he's going for is like his prowess
Like
in
extemporaneous speech that he can just do it
exactly.
right off the cuff and not have to be prepared, and that's the differentiator.
Absolutely, the authenticity and word of the day you just threw out there, extemporaneous, and
You
that's what
know,
he.
the only thing that I would say to level a criticism against that, if it works, but sometimes it doesn't. You know what I mean? If you're having an off day, or if you're not, if you come in and somebody who is really well rehearsed, you can look like you're floundering a little bit. You can look like you're rambling. And that, I think, is the danger in that is if you're not concrete and really confident about what you're going to say, what you anticipate the moderators might ask, then you can get tripped up because you're used to being able to just wing it and freeform it. So when he's got rallies or whatever else, or even when he's with a very sympathetic interviewer, they're giving him the rope to just do whatever he wants. But if you're in a more structured debate like this, it's harder to pull that off if things aren't going your way or if you start to get flustered.
Well, and but that, I mean, that happened, and they brought up the town in Ohio with the 20,000 Haitian immigrants. Trump said, they're eating dogs and cats, and the moderators interjected at that point. They said, "Oh, we talked to the town, that the what was it, the town clerk, or the town." I don't even remember, but Donald Trump said, "I've seen it on television," and I thought, no matter, one, it's both interesting, and it's interesting that the moderators like checked in with this town in Ohio, bothered to call somebody and say, "Is this happening there?" But Donald Trump was 100% right in. I mean, that was just so revealing. One, in that they would try that what they would think to fact check this, while they don't fact check the other assertions that are made by Kamala Harris. So going back to this.
That's the criticism, that the moderators weren't really neutral in this, that they were.
No, absolutely not. And it was disgusting to me, but it was also a point at which Donald Trump seemed so very real and on his feet, was saying you called one person. And I've seen other people who are reporting it. If he had had more time, or if they had dwelled on that more, you could see him getting into the weeds of, like, why don't you listen to the voices of Americans? But this is, again, I think, the problem of getting into anecdote rather than focusing on some of the larger, like, the driving morals and policies behind, especially immigration policy. I wish that he had said to, as most of all, I wish that he had asked Kamala Harris, instead of talking about the crime, had said, "Why did you let these people in?" Because I think that there are people in the Democratic Party who do so from a who have their reasons for doing so, but I don't know that she could have expressed them. And I do wish that he had also brought up so many other issues. The denial, the censorship of the Biden administration, the denial of Secret Service protection to Bobby Kennedy. So many of these other issues that they never even broached. But I actually thought that was the moment that Donald Trump seemed both like the most sympathetic and earnest in his approach to the debate, and Kamala seemed to me to be aloof and sneering, and this is what I think Trump was trying to bring forth, and he got about halfway there. So, but it certainly wasn't the, like, the polished shellacking of the primary debates or the Biden debates. So I don't know. Um, Go ahead,
Yeah,
Russ.
that was one of the things that I noticed too, Lucas, when I was watching the debate last night, was the moderators. And, one of the things that they were key to do is they had the time clock up there, but they never showed the time clock. The time clock was always hidden behind the moderators, up atop some view or some angle that was never seen. And so you can never actually see how much time was left on the clock. And one of the things that the moderators did numerous times was they seemed to cut Trump off right earlier than they would do Kamala, and they would give her a lot more leniency with the time. And they would always say, thank you, ma'am, or thank you, Kamala, or give her praise when they were done with her, when she was done with her um, remark. And they didn't really seem to do that as much as Trump. And the thing that got me the worst about the debate was just that it wasn't, like you said, Lucas and Grant, it wasn't really a debate. All the questions that they asked were never really answered. The only thing that was ever said was a rebuttal to the last thing that the last person said. And they never really got into any of the concrete answers or parts of the meat of what was the issues. They were always just complaining or trying to inject on the other person.
And to that, like when if Trump and Harris engage in another debate, I hope that that at least Donald takes note of that, and both ignores the clock and ignores them when they try to cut him off, like and not only that, just ignores the questions. Let them
tit for tat. Just do the exact same they're doing. Just ignore the questions, say whatever you want.
I mean, to really flex power, he needs to actually address not rhetorical questions to Kamala Harris, but like get into, okay, so if it's going to be this notion of, I mean, again, think about it in spaces. When a host has lost control when they're muting the people who are speaking, and so Donald Trump needs to understand that, and he needs to force their hand in that regard. And he can be as sneering or he can ignore the moderators and the time as much as possible. But if he plays the game of niceties with them, then he's lost, because he's become he's become entrapped by their court. So he needs to play his own game. He needs to start asking questions directly to the candidate. And JD Vance needs to think about this too. Bobby Kennedy even, and this is, I mean, Bobby has been the best debater that I've seen in politics in some time. He knew to focus on his message. Donald Trump should have somebody like the Trump campaign, whomever should have had a discussion about like issues that the ABC people were never going to bring up. Censorship, top of the list. And so,
what is the schedule for the next debate? Is there another one, or is there only this one that was scheduled? I just, as soon as you started saying what should happen in the next one, it made me think about, okay, well, wait, what is the next debate? Because I thought there were 3 that were scheduled, right? But now it seemed like that was the only one that was going to happen.
I don't know if there's going to be another one. I hope that the Trump campaign, if the Harris campaign has asked for a second presidential debate, I certainly hope that President Trump agrees to and joins in that debate. Because he also should have been saying, he should have called into question the censorship. He should have called into question the quote unquote democratic ideals of the Democratic Party. I mean, the other time that I thought he shined was when he called out the coup against Joe Biden, but he didn't do so in very strong words, and you could tell that he was reticent to do so. He should have absolutely called it out. He should have said, he should have laid out the details and said, Joe Biden disappeared after declaring that he was in this race to the end. And after our last debate, he disappeared for a weekend. And on some strange letterhead, we all got a tweet that he was out of the race and that you were in. Where was the primary? If and he didn't call out. He didn't ask.
That's a super good criticism. I would agree that that's a misstep. These things that are valid talking points about what has happened within the Democratic institution of the Democratic Party, right? And I'm not calling that out as anything other than democratic, because that's the way that they function. These super delegates in this process, I think, would have been very valid criticism, and I don't think it's gotten enough airtime. And he definitely could have challenged her much harder on that. It's like, why are you even on this stage?
Well,
Like, what gives you the right to be here?
yeah, I mean, it's let's take it down to like sort of a John Hughes metaphor. You know, Kamala Harris and President Trump are the stars of the high school, and they get invited to the lunch table with the freshmen, and not only that, but the freshman nerds, these journalists, and they're just giggling there with these sort of prepared softy questions. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris should both be prepared and just ignore them. And if they're going to exert their power and exert their get to the messages and the things that the American people are going to want to hear, then they need to stop playing the game of these idiot freshmen. And President Trump should have brought up another question he should have asked was, how long did you know that Joe Biden was in such a state? You know, he could have just ignored the posturing of the questions that were laid out to him, and when the mic was given to him, should have paused and looked at her and said, you know, the last debate that I had was with somebody else, and somebody else that was nominated by the Democratic Party, and it was painful for me to stand on that stage and see this person who was not at his best, and somebody that I had seen through the years. And I knew that was happening going into the debate. Did you not know that?
Yeah, and you defended it, and you said that he was in, good health and was capable of doing this. I mean, you were one of many who said this, repeatedly. So all of a sudden, one day it turned around. Like that's not consistent. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and he should do so. He should actually absolutely make it conversational, because this is part of the power and the genius behind Donald Trump as a political figure, because he did not play the trashy, wasted game of political advertisements and political money. I mean, remember in 2016, whenever he got elected, he didn't spend any money. There wasn't this barrage of there was from political action groups, but not spent by his campaign. And he didn't play this whole, like, I need to plaster the airtime with all of these political advertisements. And we saw a lot less of that going through this election, and certainly a lot less of it from the presidential candidates. There are a whole bunch of politicians out there who haven't gotten that we live in a new political era, and that political era is about doing what Trump has been doing, and that's sitting down in front of the Lex Fridmans and unheard of journalists. Like, it's exactly what Bobby did. Like, Bobby was squelched in some part due to the networks, but he certainly moved the needle in his campaign. Like any politician who's looking at the national stage and wasn't taking notes with the things that he did. I mean, even with the Trump Biden debate, what did Bobby do? He broadcast his own responses, and that was part of just a genius moment in American democracy. Was those people who wanted to listen to him, or anybody who wanted to play it later, could hear him in real time, like pausing and actually answering questions. And that was a great way for him to use the charade of the theater of the quote unquote debate and insert himself into that dialogue when he was being removed from this these quote unquote impartial journalists. So I think that we will see Trump move in that direction. Again, I think his preparation was with regards to going out and having these interviews, but he needs to bring that ease and that command of I don't know, his conviction in his campaign and in his ideas. He needs to bring that to these debates, and he needs to focus on the other candidate and ignore the moderators. And even if they mute him, that will be it's different to be muted whenever you're in a crowd of people. Again, like these primary debates with 10 people on stage. I mean, also go back to the Republican primary. And did Trump decide to play that game and stand on that stage? No, he said, I'm the obvious candidate. I'm not going to go participate in that charade. And he was 100% right about that. He did not. He got drawn into Kamala's game a little bit in this debate, but he still did well. He focused on being as authentic as he could. He's not the best either at conveying complex issues. Whenever it came to he sort of attacked the Biden-Harris supposed debt relief that got turned down, and it was in the wake of the discussion about abortion rights. Again, and I thought he did well in defending, and he was absolutely 100% conviction that he had done right by turning the question to the states. And the moderators and Harris both tried to obfuscate what he was saying, did not give him the benefit of the doubt, especially in the case of the moderators. And so he pivoted in that answer, and he turned it to the false assumption that this was going to actually ever be a question that Congress could throw back in front of the moderators asked him, would you veto it? Would you veto it? It came back to your desk. And he said, what a question, that it's not even going to happen. And I thought he was right in turning it to some of those issues, but it would have again been more powerful if he had said to Kamala Harris, instead of trying to explain what's happening, say, what were you thinking when you doubled down on a practice that had been thrown back by the Supreme Court, and you turn around and you promised all of these young students in America and people who've gone through college and have a massive amount of debt relief, that you had the power through a presidential executive order to forgive that. And
yeah, that seemed really outrageous. I mean, that's this idea that the presidential executive orders carry the weight of legislation or even power of the purse. Like, nothing in anything that I know of gives the president the capability of doing that kind of thing. So even to call into question some of the things that Kamala Harris has said she would do, he could just call it out and be like, for a fact that the president is not capable of effectuating what you're talking about. This is not even possible. As someone who has been president, and you aren't, and you don't really seem to understand what's possible here, I just think he could have done a fair number of things like that. The fact that he has been president, he could have thrown it around a little harder.
Well, but he was trying not to. He was trying to be respectful. And you see this, think also back to 2016 and Hillary. And he was furious with Hillary and some of the things that happened. The moderators also threw January 6th in his face, and he said, like, how he should have been more prepared for that. But again, he should have turned that question back to Kamala Harris and said, you want to defund the police. That there were people that supported me. Like, he could have this would have been also a good time to engage in a conversation about censorship and lawfare, because he could have talked about the charges that were levied against the J6 prisoners, the fact that many of them are still political prisoners who are facing charges of misdemeanors that have been slow walked through the courts for 3.5 years. Unbelievable. So it would have been great to see sort of some righteous anger and indignation coming from him with regards to that topic, but he was caught a bit wrong-footed. And again, by interference run by the moderators and also the time clock. So he should have ignored their power at that point and just focused on Harris And I also don't mean to say that they should that any candidate needs to go off on some long-winded tirade. What else do we understand from spaces? Like, get to the point. If there's a time clock, like, say exactly what the point is and drive it home. Like, if you can say it in one sentence and you can ask a question back to that candidate, that's what they need to be doing.
Well, that does speak a lot to the person that's interviewing, and it's been a criticism that I've had when I listen to certain people interview interested individuals that I had hoped would be asked certain types of questions in a particular way. And it really comes down to, when you're interviewing somebody, you have to have a certain amount of domain knowledge, or you have to have a certain amount of grounding in the subject, because otherwise you come in and you give the person who is talking a little too much rope to just say anything they want, versus, we really want to hear the answer to a particular question. We want to hear your thoughts on a very particular thing, and not allowing it to devolve into something else. I mean, that's where I think, if these moderators were really doing their job, be like, Harris, Vice President Harris, we're going to cut you off right here. You're not answering the question. Like, the question that was answered or asked was this: do you understand what I asked you? Because you're not answering the question in any way. What you're saying is your own thoughts about something that is completely unrelated to the topic at hand. There will be a time for you to say these things, but that time is not now. So please answer the question, or say, I don't know, because that's the only two responses that ought to be happening here. And I think for genuine interviewers and moderators, that sort of a thing can happen and does happen, but clearly wasn't happening last night. And I think that that's one of the reasons I would say this was one of the worst debates, because they were so derelict in their duties of actually moderating and facilitating the debate.
Well, it felt like a tea party in which they're like, well, if abortion was thrown, if Congress passed the law, no, it's not going to happen. And that's part, I mean, 100%, like that whole sort of vacuous fantasy world in which they live in, like politics, there are any number of people who love politics and who understand the realities of the power in Washington, and the things that were possible, that the limitations of the executive branch, and many of the subjects that were going on. But instead, we've got a bunch of sycophants who were there to propel some sort of narrative and some sort of ethos of caring that the network wanted to put forth. We saw, as I think too about the time limitations and the muting of the mic, I think about the charade that we see with congressional hearings that goes on so often, and this mistaken notion we have in America that when Congress holds a hearing, in the wake of the Trump assassination, to call the Secret Service forward, or when they call some hedge fund managers and Mark Zuckerberg forward, or who else ever, to ask their questions of them, and America thinks that they're getting closer to the truth, when there's a time limit on that question, and the questioner is both under a time limit, and the person who's answering the question is under a time limit. When we start to invoke these time limits, we get away from the power of the questioner to get to the truth, to interrupt. We reset the horizons of what our expectations are. Politicians start filling time with bluster. That's part of this disconnect with what a true debate is. Certainly we can have
it's a lot of how, as a political candidate, you are trained, right? Because there is some amount of this that happens when people are first getting into politics. And Kamala Harris has been in politics for a long time, and she's ran for a lot of different offices, and she's been within the Democratic Party apparatus for a long time. And so they teach you to stay on message. They teach you not to answer certain types of questions that won't drive you to success. And Trump, as an outsider who's never been a part of a machine like that, he doesn't have that background and that grounding in that. And I'm not saying it's the right way to do it, but it's definitely once you know that that kind of a thing is happening and that you have been taught that as a candidate, that you'll see it all the time, that candidates try to stay on message. They try to never deliver genuine thoughts that are not a part of what they have prepared and rehearsed and are ready to say in whatever venue, whether it seems like it should be an extemporaneous thing with a debate on ideas. That's why when she got asked a specific question, she didn't answer it, because that's not part of the message she wants to deliver. And she certainly doesn't want to say anything about, the country being worse off. Like, she doesn't want to admit to that, and that's why she just completely dodges and sidesteps it. I'm sure that she has like a whole list of things that if the moderators were to ask questions about that, she would have stepped right to the side of it, because that's what they rehearsed.
Well, and what you're describing is absolutely the truth with regards to politics in America for everyone. But this is what I think Donald Trump is trying to break, and
has successfully broken it. I would agree with you that he has successfully broken this and done something different.
Well, but he's still looking to push that envelope forward, and so this is why it was frustrating for me to watch the debates, but at the same time, there were moments when I felt like he was an incredibly empathetic and compassionate person. I didn't feel the same for Kamala Harris very often. There were moments whenever she actually was, when I felt that she was sort of getting to her real message, because I want to see that from all the candidates, but what Donald Trump was trying to break through, and again, I think that that's what he was hearing through the 2016 debate, through the 2020 debate. I could see his exasperation and trying to break free from that. That's why he was so often so brooding, a bombastic character in those, and he's trying to break free of it. But in doing so, he needs to, I guess the last piece of this puzzle, or the next piece of this puzzle, because there's never going to be a last piece. The next piece of this puzzle is to take the questions out of the hands of those moderators. And if a host of a debate like understands that, then they should get away from this notion of questions. They should open up the they should take from a page out of the NFL. They should have a coin. There should be a coin toss as to who gets to go first, and they should put the expectation of the politicians to ask questions of each other. They should get rid of this notion of time limits. They should also see that, like, the game the game that gets started whenever you put a time limit on is
actually I could see a way that the time limit thing could actually work. If maybe it was, you get a certain amount of total minutes, and every time you're talking, your time counts down, because then you can use time as you see fit. If there's a question that you want to spend more time on, then you're welcome to do that. I think that there's ways that you could do it that would be interesting from a game theory perspective, and also from an optics perspective. But like, there's trouble when you have, I don't know, a limited amount of airtime on something that, like a traditional broadcast thing, where you can't just sit down for 6 to 8 hours like you can do on new media. This old media, time's too much at a premium. Like, you just can't give away that much unless there's some radical shift in the way that you think about airtime.
Well, true, but maybe part of the answer is there should be. What happens if X is hosting the debate and says, "Well, we got 6 hours," because
100%. That's why I think new media has the ability to do this. Something like X, something like YouTube, where you can have as much content up there and it can be viewed at somebody's leisure, and you can play back at higher speed. You can skip around. You can do whatever you want. But like traditional broadcast media, like ABC, NBC, these dinosaur things, like they can't participate that way. And I think that's where new media really needs to shine and needs to push the boundaries. And I think if there is going to be another debate, I think Elon already threw down the gauntlet, didn't he? He said, we're going to do a debate, and if Kamala doesn't show up, then we'll do something, and Trump's going to get all the time.
Well, that would be brilliant. Yeah,
did you see that? I think he said that, didn't he?
between you and me and everybody else, the Elon at Elon Musk is muted on my Twitter feed because if he says something of actual,
and that's why you're shadow banned.
yeah, it probably is. Note to everybody: don't mute nor block Elon Musk.
It's part of the algorithm. If you aren't following Elon Musk, and if he's not muted, then you can't be amplified.
No, I think I do follow him, but I follow him so I can mute him. Maybe I don't. But part of the game that the networks have played is this artificial scarcity of time, as if a presidential debate is on the same footing as Leave It to Beaver or the Brady Bunch. Like what? We only get an hour to talk about the most important things, and we're going to limit the candidates to 3 minutes to discuss these. Like, this is part of the joke of
that is the joke of Congress too. I mean, if you think about sometimes when they're asking these questions, like, Senator, you have 3 minutes. It's like, what could you possibly get out of somebody in 3 minutes, especially when 30 seconds is spent thanking the person and doing all this other posturing and posering. It's like, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, here's the post from Elon about that he's going to have.
That's not Elon. That's I am not Elon.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought Elon actually did that. Hold on. I thought that there was one. Sorry. Sometimes when I search, I'm moving too fast. Let me find the actual one.
I know. Well,
I think there was one that Elon said. Let me see if I can.
Probably so, but yeah, I wish.
Thanks for calling me out on that though, because it definitely wasn't Elon, and that's where it's like the damn profile thing like gets me every time.
Well, another secret to improving your experience on X is anytime that I see a parody account, I block it. And I don't care who it's for, and I don't care if they are earnest in their desire for political discussion. You're not the person that you're pretending to be, and you're piggybacking on their name. If you actually want to engage in the discussion, then you don't need somebody else's picture and somebody else's name. And so I block those accounts immediately, whether it be for Elon or Trump or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Kamala Harris, anybody else. Yeah, it would be it's a whole and well, going to your comments with regards to Congress, absolutely, this is part of the joke of Congress is also this notion that the debate or the deal making gets made out there on the stage. Like, it's 100% a charade, and we should understand it as much. Like, we should not expect the House to do anything but getting together to vote. And this is also why the filibuster is so important in the Senate, and the filibuster should exist in the House, because like any amount of time is not enough for the importance of these issues. And whenever we pretend like there is a limited amount of time to discuss these issues, that we I don't know, we just set ourselves up for more and more theater. So this is something that we need to understand with regards to the debate. It would be fascinating to see, a 6-hour debate or an unlimited timeline of debate that can occur and because when we do so, we're going to see politicians who get to the point and who don't interrupt each other and who actually start talking about the ideas. But the moment that we put a finish line up there, they put their eye on the finish line, they take their eye off the ball, and we get artifice. So what has Musk said here?
This was the last thing that I could find that had anything on it.
Well, yeah, this was back in the wake of the Biden debate. So we know he would be happy to do it. I mean, it would be great traffic for X. But
right, I just couldn't find anything else that was beyond this. So no, nothing's been said beyond this when he said, "Hey, I'm willing to host a presidential debate," but I don't think anything's been said beyond this. So no, I must have misremembered seeing that.
Well, maybe Donald Trump and Elon will open up a room and invite Kamala, and just that'd be the best, like an unscheduled. And this is what I'm asking for, Elon. If you're listening, I'm so sorry that I've muted your account, but there's your fascination with Mars and space sometimes drives me a little crazy. But call Trump, open up a room and call Kamala into the room. That would be fantastic. Have JD Vance do it. Like Vivek. By the way, Vivek leading into the debate, he is a rising Republican star. I was very impressed with the things that he had to say, and he was very.
What is happening with Vivek right now? Is he running for Senate? What is his current plan? Have you caught up on?
Vivek is campaigning for Trump.
Right, but I thought because of the Senate seat that got opened up because Vance is VP.
Well, it won't be opened up unless Vance is elected. So,
right, because then they would do an appointment, right? That would be the governor. Yeah. The governor would then appoint the senator, right? I think that's how that works.
Yes, yes. So anyway, that's all I had on the debate. I'm glad we got to talk about it because I feel a little frustrated and exasperated in picturing a better debate in the future. Anything y'all have to close it out?
No, it's good talking about it. I don't know if Rusty's got any closing thoughts, but enjoyed discussing this. It's definitely appropriate for today for us to give our thoughts on it and to kind of dissect it a bit.
No, I really didn't got any closing thoughts on this subject. I do want to say, a quick, hearts and prayers are out to everybody that was involved in 9/11. It is an anniversary of a big date that happened in our history, and I do think we should at least acknowledge it on the air. But beyond that, I think we did a great space today on the debate.
Well, amen to that, Rusty.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll catch you tomorrow.